Jason, you're blowing my mind a little bit, sir. So there's a lot. I can, if I can watch this and have you play it, and I'm still blown away. I think that says something. Oh my gosh, never is an apple falling into a bowl been more meaningful. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to PlayStation Underground. On today's show, we are playing Gorogoa, which is coming to PS4. I am joined by the game's creator, Jason Roberts. Jason, welcome to the program.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. There is a lot to talk about in this game. It is a game all about framing, I think is safe to say. It is a puzzle, both a puzzle and maybe loosely narrative-based game. And I kind of want to hear how this all started.
It is narrative. The narrative is, somewhat intentionally mysterious. I've been asked about how it started many times, and so it's partly truth, partly myth at this point to try and reconstruct the origins that happened like 10 years ago now, probably, before I,
Yeah, you've been especially from concept, you've been working on this for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, back 10 years ago, I was just writing down stuff in notebooks, probably. I started it very sort of indirectly grew out of a comic project. So I like making visual art. I like drawing, and I was but I've always had trouble just doodling absently, and I need drawings that I make to be part of some kind of a project or structure. So I was looking for something that would just give me reason or a structure within to produce lots and lots of do lots of visual design and lots of drawing. I first tried a comic, and that
went perfectly.
It went perfectly up until page about 11, and then I hadn't thought the story through, and it was too hard to go back and change things because I've already so exquisitely laid out all the panels. And I also realized that it was the page layout, assembling the frames, that I was most excited about. That structure more so than the particular story I was telling. And I began to think about ways to take that, kind of creating that mosaic of these kind of visual or narrative compartments that make up the comic page and do something else with them. Take away the rules of sequential art that is kind of definitional to comics and explore something else, because I like seeing framed images arranged in this kind of evocative way, and just by seeing multiple images, your mind tries to figure out how they're connected.
And I want to quote you in something, in an absolutely marvelous quote that you gave us for PlayStation Blog, actually, which is, a spoon is just a spoon, but a framed picture of a spoon is a message. And I think that is such a marvelous marvelous piece of information about how you kind of view the purpose of this game.
Yeah, I mean, I was partly just kind of fell in love with the idea of seeing something inside of a frame, I think.
Right.
Because there's always some intentionality or purpose behind something being framed. I mean, if you see pictures on a wall, they're there because they're meaningful.
Right.
Or
you needed to just fill all that dead space up on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a meaning of its own, I guess.
It's true. But we actually almost breezed right through it. But I love you kind of got to a great little initial moment of clarity in which you lined up the branches and the apple fell into the basket, and that's kind of showing how all these frames are interconnected in a really fascinating way.
Yeah, that is a moment that is sort of engineered for the player to stumble across because it's not explicitly explained that that's going to happen. So the game just funnels you into a position where you kind of have nothing to do but move tiles around until you hit on that. Because I feel like that having that moment be a surprise is more effective than having a tutorial pop up and tell you what to do.
Agreed. And tell me, and because we're kind of you're playing for us right now, but describe to us a little bit about the various levels of interaction that you as the player have on the screen. You can move entire frames around, but it looks like you also have some degree of interaction with the objects in the frame, correct?
Right. So within each frame, it plays a little bit like a first-person adventure game. So you can
move in and out.
You can move in and out.
Mm-hmm. Rotate this.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I can use the controller buttons.
You're used to that there keyboard. There's a little clue.
There we go.
Of what we saw before.
So so you can move your point of view, and that's it. So you can't physically interact with.
Okay.
objects.
I see. So you're just moving your point of view, your perspective.
And that was a very important design decision that I made early on. As a kind of discipline, partly as a kind of discipline for myself, so that I couldn't design any puzzles that are entirely within one frame.
Okay.
So, I mean, one thing early on that I considered was the ability to, say, put a combination lock on a door, and then you search an area for a clue, and then you can go push buttons to enter the combination. And that would help sort of pad out the length of the game and give me puzzles that are easier to design than these ones where two pictures connect together. So I initially wanted that safety net, but I decided that no, I should, place this kind of discipline on myself where I have to use the unique mechanic of this game for every single puzzle, and that ended up making the design much more complicated. Because
I can imagine.
There are many designs in the game that would have been much easier if the player just had to do like turn a lever or push one button to make something happen. Right.
And it's through, as I always like to say, through restraint that we often reach our best work. So
yeah, I mean, I think that the inability to have direct sort of physical interaction by the player did force me to design puzzles in a weird and different way. And it forced me to make the source of energy for anything that kind of moves in the scene has to come from within the world.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around it a little bit because there's so much interconnection between each scene, each frame, the items in the frame. How do you as the designer keep the puzzle part of all of that straight in your head? Like, did you just have like huge notes pasted up all around? What does your office look like?
There wasn't much. I never found it very useful to take notes because drawing things doesn't have the right spatiality for designing puzzles. So what I would do is just I would always start drafting things in the game engine. But I would start with like simple art, because a lot of the puzzles in the game are conceptually simple. Like for me, just the idea of the way a puzzle works is simple. The hard part is actually getting all the visual components to line up and making it work. So really, the real challenge of the puzzle design was actually visual design, or those two things are completely intertangled. So I had to build art that was so this is like the one last kind of, or the next mechanic to be introduced is these sort of moving window tiles.
Jason, you're blowing my mind a little bit, sir. So there's a lot. I can, if I can watch this and have you play it and I'm still blown away. I think that says something. Oh my gosh, never is an apple falling into a bowl been more meaningful.
Right. Where was I?
Yeah, I sidetracked you. I apologize. There's a lot to unpack. You were talking about how you built a lot of it in the game engine.
Oh, right. So, usually when two scenes connect, you have to do things like match color and lighting across the two scenes. So, in order to test out a puzzle, I had to build some version of the art that was good enough to suggest lighting or suggest color, because not everything that's part of a puzzle also before and after it takes place in the puzzle is supposed to look like a natural part of the world. So everything has to be kind of designed to be to do two things at once, be a puzzle piece and be, a reasonable object in a scene that makes sense.
That doesn't just break the inner logic of the whole game.
And in a world that has some fanciful imagery, but the game world itself internally is not meant to be, apart from Gorogoa, the creature itself, is not meant to be that inherently magical. So
right.
I mean, that's sort of like the principle of not allowing player interaction. The magic is always supposed to come with the connection between two scenes and not within a scene. If there are fanciful illustrations within a scene in the game, those fanciful illustrations have a sort of a cultural reason to exist within the game world.
When you were sharing this game either with, friends, family, or, early testers, did you find in any other, earlier versions that there were sections of the game that were significant roadblocks or challenges that you had to clear?
Absolutely.
And how did you overcome those challenges?
You mean for the player?
Yeah, well, as a designer, how did you address those?
There was a lot of playtesting, and I think I became smarter as I went along as a designer in terms of anticipating where people would get stuck. I think this shelf puzzle is like one of the block points, and it is one of the older puzzles in the game.
Interesting.
I don't think it benefits from as much of my game design wisdom as later games, as later puzzles. And so I was very careful, as hopefully we'll see, about what the design of the puzzle that comes after this one, because I still like this puzzle enough that I wasn't going to cut it from the game, but I wanted a puzzle after this that would be kind of reassuring to people that
had just recently
in case
banged their head against the wall.
Right, in case they sort of stumble through this one, the next puzzle is designed so that it can't be, you can't accidentally solve it, basically.
And then tell me, we spoke a little bit beforehand about how you have some engineers assisting with bringing this game to PlayStation 4, but also you had folks helping you with the composition and the musical arrangements. In terms of art, I mean, is that largely your design? Did you bring in others to complement your work? How did that work out?
I did all the art
illustration.
In the game. Yeah.
And animation as well.
Yeah, I mean there's some 3D used in character animation. But I did that animation, and I learned that I should hire an animator on the next project, because although I was able to get the animations in the game that I needed, I really ran up against my limits in terms of like expressive character animation. And I think I guess I wanted out of hubris to do everything visual myself.
Right.
And now that I've done that, I can kind of let go. And I realize that there are scenes in the story in terms of, again, character expression, character performance that I just could not execute myself as an animator. And if I'm working with somebody with that skill set, that will open up new, whole new avenues for me as a storyteller, I think.
Superb.
I was, fortunate that this game is sort of built around an oblique and sort of parable-like story, so that it doesn't rely as much on strong, dramatic story beats as some other games. And
you don't feature any kung fu martial arts scenes in it, so
no. But I would have that option if
if you bring someone on. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of have to ask this. As far as I'm concerned, when I look around the industry and I'm seeing a lot of folks in the press writing up, pretty rave thought pieces about this game and reviews. I mean, what is your reaction as a designer and creator to? It seems like this game definitely found an audience and audience that was very appreciative as well.
Definitely. What's my reaction been to the reaction?
Yeah, exactly.
It's been, I do insulate myself. I do insulate myself from a lot of the reaction just due to sensitivity. So.
Well, I'll just tell you that there are a lot of folks that wrote very nice.
Yeah, no, I know.
things about
I read some of them. I just I don't exhaustively read reviews and
hit F5 on message boards every day.
No, oh God, no. And I think that's something I'll become more comfortable with doing as I gain a little bit more distance from the game.
Yeah, I imagine when it's in such close proximity to your actual work on it,
Yeah, I mean,
crafting bringing something into being, it's kind of a long ordeal. So.
Well, once I have sort of feel like I'm started working on the next thing, then I can say, well, this is something that something in the past that I can learn from, as opposed to having sort of all my soul and ego invested in it, which is part of the process of making it.
I love the lamp puzzles that you have in here of aligning the stars with the lamp. That's fantastic. That's a really nice theme.
Yeah, I sort of like
Wow.
intuitively follow what is, to some extent, what is, feels satisfying and also has some thematic meaning.
What would you say is, as a designer, maybe even as just an artist, what is your main takeaway? The maybe one of the principal learnings that you've had from this project?
I mean, there's basic things like, there's the fail fast adage. I think early on I put too much time into finishing art or finishing the design for sections of the game that I hadn't thought through in terms of their narrative or thematic function, and in the end couldn't be kind of salvaged. So I threw out a ton of work, and a lot of that is just part of the learning process. This is the first game I made, so I kind of the process of like making your first few simple, like small bad games that you're supposed to go through, I kind of had to go through on this one game.
I see.
And I guess I learned that working in the visual art is something I could take comfort in, and I had to be careful not to take too much comfort in that as an escape from solving the big hard design problems. So there's always going to be something in any project that is sort of a comforting rabbit hole to go down. And I mean, there's a term for it in design. It's like called comfort coding or something like that, where you pick a problem that you can feel safe, kind of cuddle up with and dump a bunch of time into and solve, but it's actually not.
It's not the most important
Yes.
thing that you could be doing on the project. That makes sense. I don't know if you're comfortable answering this question, and we can totally breeze past if not, but if this is your first game, what was your discipline and your occupation before going into game design?
I was a software engineer.
So doing more technical
Yeah.
stuff than creative stuff.
Yeah, it was not in the games industry, and I did that for more than a decade.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that that was my career path, but I didn't love it, and I wanted to do something creative. I didn't think doing something creative for a living was practical, and until basically that sort of era of successful indie games, was prominently kind of kicked off by Braid in the aughts. That made it seem like it was actually something that you could do. And I think of all the possible creative disciplines, at that time, gaming seemed like the one that made the most sense because of my combination of skills, and it's what I wanted to. I'd always imagined making games also, so I was excited about the possibility.
Well said. And I am excited about the possibility of playing through this in its entirety, which we will save for another day.
Yeah.
But Jason, thank you so much for coming out here and recording with us. Jason Roberts is the creator of Gorogoa. We've been playing Gorogoa on the PlayStation 4 Pro today. And Jason, again, I really appreciate you being on the program with us. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great.
Absolutely. And until next time, join us on PlayStation Underground.